And then final point here, our own government now, the president of these United States has just signed in an executive order. Executive orders are not laws, but they identify the policies that happen in the executive branch and have declared that Bitcoin will be part of a strategic reserve. And we have a crypto stockpile with about 5 or 6 assets dedicated to that as well. Our own government, good, bad, or otherwise, this is where we are. And that is the metric I believe people should use when comparing, all right, this is Bitcoin. So what is this? What is its purpose? And it may have a great purpose.
What's up, Doc? Welcome to the Docs Get Money podcast. Are you a badass doctor killing it professionally and has bigger dreams than just clocking in and out of the hospital? Do you want to leave behind a legacy that is as lit as an HBCU homecoming? Want to know how other doctors are getting to the big bag? That's right, making 5, 6, and 7 figures without putting on the white coat? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then you're in the right place. I'm your host, Kimberly, but you can call me Kim or KB. I went from being a burnt out and overwhelmed emergency physician to the founder and CEO of 2 6-figure non-clinical companies and beating burnout along the way. I'm also your business coach, here to help you make money moves to change the world. This podcast isn't just about making money, though. It's about leveling up your life, mindset, and bank account so you can build an empire that's as iconic as Beyonce. You ready? Let's get into it. If you're sitting on a mountain of expertise and wondering if it's possible to replace your clinical income while practicing full-time, I've got news for you. It's not just possible, it can happen in 90 days or less. But only if you create your FIRE offer, your express lane to fast income and a lifestyle that allows you to retire early, all while keeping your day job. Tailored for doctors ready to change lives outside of the exam room, you go from concept to cash in under 90 days as a consultant, coach, or midterm rental business. Think it's a stretch with your schedule? Think again. With the FIRE Offer Combustion Kit, you'll craft your expertise and story into an offer that's too hot to touch and sell it to make your first 4 or 5 figures. Ready to change lives and make bank fast? DM the word BURN to me, Dr. Kimberly, at Dr. Kimberly B on Instagram, and let's start a fire. What's up, Doc? Welcome to yet another episode of the Docs Get Money podcast. I'm so excited to have you here. Today is another interview episode. Now, y'all know I always give y'all fire. Like, it's always someone here that is absolutely amazing, someone that you just want to be or aspire to, and this is no different. Today is a little bit different, though, because she is not a physician. I'm probably going to end up calling her doctor at some point, but she's a professor, so, you know, same difference, same type of deal. But I have my wonderful friend, my cryptocurrency expert, my muse as far as all of the things wealth is concerned, Professor Tonya Evans on the line today. We met each other back in early 2023. We were at a conference together, and I went to the conference alone. She had brought some people with her, but she was alone, and we just kind of was just getting settled in. And I just randomly just put into the group chat for the conference, like, hey, I'm here. Does anybody want to grab a drink? And she's like, yeah, I'll grab a drink with you. First person to say. I'm like, I don't know if I just met a weirdo or what. Well, it turns out that we have so much in common, not just because we're Black women, but some of our journey is very, very similar to each other. And like I said, she is a law professor. She is a cryptocurrency expert, one of the foremost cryptocurrency experts in the country, if not the world. And so I'm so excited to have her on the pod. She's a podcaster as well. She's an author as well. Listen, this woman do so many different things. Let me just read her bio so y'all can know just a little bit about her. But she's incredible, and I can't wait to have this conversation with her. So Dr. Tonya M. Evans is a globally recognized expert in fintech, blockchain, cryptocurrency, and financial regulation. a tenured professor at Penn State, Dickinson Law, and a board member at Digital Currency Group. She helps professionals and businesses navigate the evolving digital economy with confidence and strategic insight. That was the very short version, the high level of her. But you'll see how amazing she is when we talk in just a few minutes. So, doctor, like I said, I can still call you doctor because you are.
Yes, my dad reminds me doctor of laws is not medicine, so he puts me in my place, but technically speaking,
you're a doctor here on the Docs Get Money podcast, so it's okay. Tell your daddy another doctor said that it's okay to be called doctor. So, Professor Evans, Dr. Tonya Evans, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
Doc Brown, this is amazing. Hey, docs out there. I was supposed to be a doc, and I didn't do a medical doctor. Didn't do so well in chemistry, and evidently that's something that you need to, for the solid foundation going forward.
Sort of.
But I'm so thrilled, my sister, to connect with you on your pod and just in life. I loved reliving the moment when I said yes, because, darling, the only thing I love more than the Get Money podcast is a proper cocktail. So
okay. Exactly. Well, briefly, tell me how you got into the law, and then more specifically, let's just fast track into how did you become, after you tell me that, how did you become the cryptocurrency expert that you are? Because when I heard about crypto, I was just like, oh, this is another sham that's about to take over the world, but it's not a sham. So tell me more.
Absolutely. It's interesting how the two stories connect. But my father is a retired colorectal surgeon. My mother, a patent attorney, and they both went to Howard undergrad. And upon graduation, or close there too, this little bundle of wonderful came onto the scene with the gangster lean. My mom and dad both moved to Philadelphia from DC. My dad went to Jefferson Medical School and my mom to Temple Law School. And I actually grew up literally in the Temple Law Library in the Black Law Students Association room with a little black and white TV and potato chips, I think. And somebody was actually going to turn my mom in, like, what in the child abuse is going on here? But evidently, I made good. And in all seriousness, I remember one of the first things that my parents in general, but probably my dad in particular, gave me was a little doctor's bag. And we just always knew that that's what I was going to do. But I also am a pretty good arguer. And I love communication and writing. I came into the world really a writer, speaker, teacher. And so my path just took me pretty on a both traditional but also non-traditional route. I played on tennis on scholarship at Northwestern. And then I played professionally for 4 years before I went to law school. So
I don't think I ever
did you know that?
No, so you could have been the next Serena,
That's correct.
The next Venus,
Yes.
the next Tanya.
Yes. I was scratching and surviving quite a bit in the theme of good times. Always, playing some of the smaller challenger circuit events to earn enough points to get into the majors. I think I played from 91 to 95, and my greatest year was in 93. I won a major tournament in the United States and got a wild card into the U.S. Open. I was in the qualies of the U.S. Open. And even though I lost in the qualifying rounds, I made more money that week than I had in the previous year. That's saying something. But after that, I think I lost one of my last tournaments, a small one where I was the first seed. I lost in 3 sets. My best friend came down. I was in Puerto Vallarta. And we drank tequila for a week, and I was like, let me get my black on life together, and went to law school. Did great. I went to Howard Law, graduated with honors, was the editor-in-chief of the Journal, and so that's kind of when my traditional color inside the lines life truly began. Clerked in the Third Circuit, worked in big law. And even though I'm an intellectual property lawyer by training, like my mom, and I was always curious about what's next and the impact of new technology on intellectual property, on patents for innovations, for inventions, for the written and spoken word when you're thinking about copyright, how to use a word or a phrase or a logo in business, and that's really trademark. So that always fascinated me because it's always challenged by the next type of technology.
Yeah,
And
that's
at the
true.
time, it was peer to peer technology, and people are file sharing and all of that. And that kind of leads to your second question about how does someone like me,
Mm-hmm.
sorry, big law, following all the rules, just like you, in 2017, when I heard about this magic internet money, want no parts of it. I am
Right.
licensed to this day to practice law in 4 states, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and DC.
Mm-hmm.
I, at the time, was a tenured professor. I was just on the heels of becoming an associate dean of a law school.
Oh,
I wanted
wow.
no parts of what I couldn't see or couldn't understand as a non-technologist. And somebody who really, I did the traditional things. We could talk about what that looks like in terms of building wealth in the first generation. Even though I had professional parents, they were really kind of starting this thing. I didn't come from an
Yeah.
investor class, right? So what did that mean for me as somebody? I'm socially liberal and fiscally probably a little conservative, and we're just women. Like a lot
Yeah.
is riding on us making sound decisions for the best interest of our family.
Yeah.
So, kind of to put a fine point on this, is just to say, in that moment in 2017, I also learned about the underlying technology, this method of organizing and protecting data so that it
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't be centralized into some of the big conglomerates that we're concerned about these days,
Mm-hmm.
and that there would be more transparency in a very opaque financial system, more accessibility, and more participation in what the future of what I saw to be the future of work and the future of wealth and the future of innovation. So I didn't know in that moment what that would mean for me in my pocketbook personally, and it
Right.
certainly helped. But what I could do to position the next wave of lawyers to be conversant in the space, to answer the questions, to problem solve, to spot the issues in the same ways that we've traditionally done in a whole new world. So that is what fascinated me enough to at least begin to teach. I teach blockchain law, I teach information privacy law, and some of the other tech forward things at the intersection of my area of expertise, intellectual
Mm-hmm.
property, and also what's next.
That's really, really interesting. So let me go back just a little bit. I've had a friend of mine who's also an intellectual property attorney on here, but help me to just redefine for my audience, what is intellectual property? Like how do you know if you have it? I
Hmm.
think a lot of people don't realize what they have as intellectual property. And then I know there's different ways you can protect it, from patents, copyrights, all of those things. But if you could just kind of define an intellectual property for me, that'd be really great.
Absolutely. I'm so glad that you asked this because a lot of times we can breeze past really, really important things. And as we talk about the aspect of get money and how a doctor can, be in practice or even transitioning from practice, but still not have to completely give up everything that they did traditionally because they may over time have created something that is novel and useful and
Right.
not immediately obvious. Maybe you have created or developed a method or a process or some type of thing that is unique to your particular practice that no one else has done before. Now, in
Mm-hmm.
order to move forward, you would want to file for patent protection, which means you would have the right to exclude others from developing it. Maybe you
Mm-hmm.
don't even know how to build it, but at least you can work with others to either build it or not for a
Mm-hmm.
limited period of time, and usually from the time of invention to the time of the expiration of a patent, which is federal protection that says you have the exclusive right to develop this or
Mm-hmm.
to license others to do so. And so, licensing or participating in patent pools where you come together with others who have invented in the same space, and maybe you have maybe there's think about drug protection, for example. It's the reason that you can have a protected type of medication, and then after a certain year, at a certain number of years, you can have a generic version of that.
Right. Right.
And that's just one of many examples in the medical field that you can see, or medical device, or something else.
Mm-hmm.
That is separate and distinct protection from protecting creativity. So something that is written, recording, artistic, even something that might be visual art or performative art. that is what we say, you created it with the mind. That's where the intellectual aspect of it, it's still personal property, but it's intangible. It's
Yeah.
not physical. It can be expressed in a physical form. So I could spout off a poem or something like that. But if I write it down, if it's recorded, if it's capable of being copied, it is subject to copyright protection, which
Got you.
actually comes into existence just as we're creating, as we're recording here, or
Yeah.
the notes that you might have. There is some protection there. Federal protection allows you certain exclusive rights: the right to copy, the right to distribute those copies, the right to prepare adaptations, the right to perform it publicly or display it publicly. And then there are two more, one at the federal and state level, but let's talk federal level: trademark protection. The name of your company, the name of a series of books, not a single book, but a series. All sorts of things that, as long as it's not useful, that is something that is a way for people to identify your product or your services. Example, one of my favorite examples comes from Coming to America and the difference between McDonald's and
And
McDowell's.
McDowell's, yes.
Right? Right? You see them golden
Yes.
arches, and they got a letter. My man got a
Right.
letter. It's like, those golden arches? Yeah.
No,
We're
these are
gonna
golden
expect that.
arcs.
That's right. That's right.
That's what he
He's like,
said.
very different. McDonald's said, very
Very
not
different.
different. Right. So those are some. And then one final one that people don't think about a lot, but it's related to patent protection. And it's the when you have like a secret sauce or something, there's something where you may not want to tell everybody how it works. So in order to get patent protection, you have to say, this is how someone who would know how to do this, these are the instructions.
Okay.
And in exchange for that, the government will give you an exclusive period of time to do that or not.
Okay.
But that could be separate and apart from trade secret, where if you tell somebody, then you lose the ability to really monetize it. And
Yeah.
so you keep a trade secret instead. And I think a lot of doctors miss that opportunity as well. And so that's a fourth. It's a lesser known one, but it's an important one. So that's kind of to set the context and to see in terms of connecting it to technology, in what ways is intellectual property created with the mind that you can monetize and have personal property rights in. How is that challenged by technology, and how is what are the opportunities to create other means of monetization and participation in new technologies?
That makes sense. I guess now my connection to intellectual property and cryptocurrency may be widened. I don't know if I'm understanding it more or understanding it less, because it's like we have what's called fiat money, which I don't remember exactly what that means, but I know
Gotcha.
that's what we're operating off of. But cryptocurrency is not the same type of thought process, or that's not how that's gets its wealth. So explain to me, that's what I'm trying to say. Explain to me the
Yep.
connection really between intellectual property and then cryptocurrency.
Okay, so it's interesting because the word cryptocurrency, because of the currency part, people do focus on the first use case and the whole reason that Bitcoin, which is the first type of cryptocurrency, was released in January of 2009. I mean, we've been in this game a minute, so people think like it just came out of nowhere. And in some sense, early on it did, but it's firmly established now. You turn on CNBC, and the ticker symbol includes crypto, and the OG is Bitcoin. So it just is what it is. It's not going anywhere. But the reason for it, and there's a pseudonymous person or group, we actually don't know the folks by actual name, but we call them either individually or collectively. Satoshi Nakamoto was the one who developed the software to enable us to have a peer-to-peer way to exchange value. He, she, or they talked about it as being an alternative form of fiat currency, to your point, and I'll drill down on that. And the idea of using, and this is a good idea of what could have been patented, subject to patent protection, having things that already existed, the internet, peer-to-peer technology, the file sharing back in the day. consensus methods of coming to agreement about the truth of any one thing, and combining them all to have a secure method of exchanging value. In this case, we're talking about money. If I, from one person to another without needing a bank or a government. In the United States, particularly at that time, people are like, we have the US dollar. It's the global reserve currency of the world, darling. Like,
Right.
why do we need something else? Kind of fast forward to a time where things are very uncertain for a lot of people, and you're starting to feel and understand the reason you might want to have an alternative,
Right.
even to the global reserve currency. And to talk about crypto and currency, the first part of that word, crypto, doesn't mean cryptic. Look, it's related, but I think that scares a lot of people as
It
well.
does. Yeah.
It comes from the science of encryption, cryptography.
Ah, got it.
So you have encrypted methods of exchanging value. And the secret sauce for cryptocurrency is, in addition to functioning as a currency, I could send you a Bitcoin. I prefer that you would send me one. You'd have to pry you'd have to pry my Bitcoin from my cold dead hands. We'll talk about that. But it's not just a method of exchanging money in the sense of $1 for $1, $100 for $100. It is taxed here in the United States and considered a capital asset that can appreciate or depreciate depending upon where we are, as well. And that's different than fiat currencies. You mentioned the term, and it basically means government issued and backed currency.
Thank you. Okay.
That's the bottom line for what fiat is. This is another way. And so, we can continue to explore this, but think of it as a high level of just another method of exchanging value. Some days you're going to carry cash, maybe for a tip. I don't know what else we use it for, but, well, you might want to have some. Shout out to Fani. She had a safe. I highly recommend. You might want to have, you might use Zelle. You might use Venmo. You might
Cash
wire
App.
funds. You might have a same day ACH or over time. You might run a credit card. You might have calorie shells. You might have salt. You might have sugar. Whatever we come to an agreement about value, the same can be said about government issued currency. It is no longer, for decades, it hasn't been on the actual gold standard. The United States dollar is based on the what? The full faith and credit of this government. And it's backed on a fractional basis. If we all showed up to get our money, doctors, let me tell you, not everybody's getting their money. And if we're really stacking our stacks like we should, having FDIC insurance is important, but it's capped at $250,000.
Right.
So if you have less than $250,000, rock on.
Cool.
If we're building wealth, $250,000 at some point in time in our lives, if it isn't already the case, should be a bad day, bad
Yeah.
year, a bad balance. But if not everybody's going to get their money and you're going to be capped, then we need to find different ways to not only preserve what we have, but to also grow it. And then, final point, what do we do when we're no longer here anymore? How does that transfer so that the next generation isn't starting from scratch? We as women, and if you're women of color, know that we never start even, and we're getting further and further behind. So those are
Right.
all the reasons when you think about what is crypto, how can you exchange it, how is it valued? It really is a community-based belief. And then we can talk about why Bitcoin is special too in that regard.
Sure. We can touch on that. I think also, I just think about there's so many coins or so much cryptocurrency coming out now that this is taken off, since you said since the first word or the first time it was written was in 2009. But
Right.
so now that it's been over 10 years that it's been kind of like a topic of conversation and people have had the time to build the belief behind it, it's like we don't know where it's going because, of course, you hear these meme coins. During the pandemic, Doge was really, really big. And there's just like, there's so much, you just don't know what to trust. And I think
Right.
that's also part of what's holding people back. I'm just being honest. That's what held me back from
Absolutely.
understanding and to participating in it, because it's just like, what am I actually doing here? If it's like, oh, if this one day is going to be, how do we know to trust like one of these and that I'm not losing my money by investing in another? Like, you see what I'm saying?
Right.
So I think that's part of
Absolutely.
the hesitation as well too.
Yeah, that's why I had to really sit when I was thinking about the first book and how to, it's literally called Digital Money Demystified. The idea of what were all of the beliefs that I had, and then to test my beliefs, my misperceptions, things I think were intentionally injected into the ecosystem, what we now know by banks that were secretly working behind the scenes to have their own form of cryptocurrency, to lobby
Hmm.
Congress. We have stablecoin legislation moving through, just passed out of the Senate Banking
Hmm.
Committee. There's an analogous bill in the House that's moving through. We will have stablecoin legislation, which basically means a type of cryptocurrency that is pegged to the dollar to
Hmm.
strengthen the dollar around the world. So, like, these things are literally happening. But to your point, there are thousands of different types of coins that are native to a particular blockchain, meaning they are saving their transactional information to a specific blockchain. And so Bitcoin is one versus a token. It doesn't have its own blockchain, so it writes its transactions. This is all software to an existing blockchain, and that's the difference between a coin and a token, right?
Okay.
And to your point, there are thousands of them, and most of them we call them shit coins. I'm sorry if someone's mom is listening because that's what we call them. And if you want to play with your money, rock on, don't at me. But I'm looking strategically about how crypto can play a small but important part in my overall portfolio.
Hmm.
The only thing I play with less is my time, right? You
Yeah.
got time and you got money, and time is actually more valuable because I can't get more of that, but I can create more assets.
Yes.
And so I had to lean into the fact that it felt so unfamiliar. It felt contrary to everything I've ever learned about finances, and really begin at the beginning with resources. They might sell me a learning opportunity, but they weren't selling me a token. They weren't selling me a product. They weren't
Hmm.
selling me a platform. So I could just the facts, ma'am, because we're all very smart people. You put something in front of us and we read it, we write, we seek to understand.
Yeah.
And that's really the protection against being scammed. It's like, we fear what we don't understand, but think of
Right.
all that you have learned. Like the scariest thing is getting in a car when you don't know what to do with it. And now you drive to this day with literally not even paying attention. And you
Right.
seem to get from point A to point B 99.9% of the time. I
Right.
had to lean into the language. I had to learn the difference between a Bitcoin, which was the OG, like why was it special?
Yeah.
Bitcoin, there are only 21 million Bitcoin that will ever be created, and 19 million plus are already in circulation, which is why you see the dramatic price from literally zero to the most recent all-time high at the time of our conversation, which is just north of 106,000 per coin.
Wow.
You also can have $1 of Bitcoin. You don't need to have, you know, 50,000, 60,000, 80,000, 100. But because of that hard cap, it's actually more sound in my humble opinion. And this is not legal or financial advice, just the metrics of something that is verifiably scarce
Yeah.
and increasingly more in demand. We have major financial institutions that have created exchange traded products based on the underlying asset that is Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies. They have to buy, they have to collateralize 100%. That means
Hmm.
it will always be in more demand as more and more people start to pay attention. And it's verifiably scarce. And that's the reason that people not only think of Bitcoin in particular as sound money, but
Yeah.
also the type of asset that is verifiably scarce in digital. They compare it to digital gold. They call it digital gold, which is quite interesting. And then final point here, our own government now, the president of these United States has just signed in an executive order. Executive orders are not laws, but they identify the policies that happen in the executive branch and have declared that Bitcoin will be part of a strategic reserve.
Hmm.
And we have a crypto stockpile with about 5 or 6 assets dedicated to that as well. Our own government, good, bad, or otherwise, this is where we are.
Yeah.
And that is the metric I believe people should use when comparing. All right, this is Bitcoin.
Hmm.
So what is this? What is its purpose? And it may have a great purpose.
Hmm.
Filecoin, I'm not affiliated in any way, but let me give a few examples. Filecoin is a project with a token where it's like decentralized file storage, like Box or Dropbox, but in a way that is more accessible, but also more secure. And they have a token. I know the people, I know the project. I'm a fan. It's not the same as Bitcoin. It functions differently, but you should also have some diversity within an asset class and also diversity across assets. How is that different from Ethereum? How is that different from Doge? These are the questions that you start to ask, and I'm going to share some links that you can have in the show notes where people, you don't have to pay for this. You just go and you can see the ticker, you can get the history and
I
start to
love
learn
that.
about the things that you hear about. And I think that will help demystify the space.
Absolutely. Thank you. And you said it because you did write the book, but your book is called Digital Money Demystified.
Mm.
And I know that is like the go-to resource so that you can start to detangle what all of these things mean, and what they're about. And I find it to be super helpful. I got it when it launched. So
Excellent.
um, it is helpful to detangle all of that.
Hmm.
Let's do this because I know we don't have much time because Professor Evans is, let me tell you, she's very rich. She's very busy, very booked and busy. Um, Thank you for that. And we will put a link in the show notes where people can go get your book as well too. So you're now at a point in your life where, yes, you're a tenured professor. Yes, you've been practicing law. You've taught law. You've done all things that you're supposed to in law. And I liken it very much to, and I'm sure you can relate from because of your dad as well too. You know, a doctor that's been doing the doctor thing for a long time,
Right.
and you've gotten all the accolades and gotten all the awards. You saved the patients' lives. You've done all of these things, but you're at a point in your life where you're kind of in a transition, in a pivot.
Yeah.
And you're an entrepreneur as well too. That's the one title that I have not used since we have started the podcast. So talk to me about a little bit about where you are right now, what you're doing, and you told me that you are working on some consulting work right now. So tell
Yes.
me about your transition and how you're pivoting from what you know, kind of like the house of law, and going into your own entrepreneurial journey a little bit more.
This is a really exciting time because the things that I've been talking about since 2017 and that others had talked about since 2009, like this technology is going to change the world. Pay attention. I felt like for a long time I've screamed into the void. I developed the first online blockchain and crypto law certificate program. So I was teaching blockchain law at in law school, but I wanted a greater reach. I want, in all ways I move through the world, one, leaving things better than I found them, and two, two tenets I believe in strongly: high impact and high integrity. And how could I share that not just with my little subset of a subset of people, law students? I love you all. And it's not even but, and this is so big and so important that I want to make sure that communities are prepared and professionals
Yeah.
are prepared for all of the changes. One of my greatest frustrations is working with legal and financial professionals who don't know what the hell is going on. It
Yeah.
has cost me time, it has cost me money, and the stakes are incredibly high. So after writing the book and certainly leaning in and helping in investors, and I'm happy to still do that. I have a small but mighty group of coaching clients there to help advise them on. My course is called Going from Cash to Crypto. Some just take the self guided programs about 4 hours. And you go back to it again and again. So, and they work with me to update them on, okay, I've done the core program. How have things changed from a monthly or quarterly basis? Love doing that. What my consulting is focused on now is, in addition to that, what this means for professionals. How do lawyers and financial advisors and trust advisors stay up to speed with the meteoric shift at the federal and state levels with respect to regulation and legislation in the space? Professionals are getting they're getting caught flat-footed. What does it mean to accept cryptocurrency for your business? What does it, nonprofits, what does it mean to accept crypto assets as charitable donations? So working at the leadership and executive and board levels to help them to ask the right questions and make the right decisions from a prudent point of view so that your business is not caught flat-footed as well is a really, really important part of that. And then a final part is licensing my content. So yes, I've built this, but there are institutions or companies that may want to white label From Cash to Crypto or have it be well curated for their own workforce to prepare as well. That's something that comes up not only just now in Women's History Month, but Financial Literacy Month is coming up as well and beyond. So this is not a static experience. It's a necessarily dynamic, but those are some of the things that I've leaned into as a consultant, as an advisor, as a fractional C-suite person that comes in and works with decision makers to start to think about these things and to be like Netflix and not Blockbuster. That's kind of the way that I define it. For my Gen Xers and elder millennials in the space.
Exactly, because I'm like, I know exactly what you're talking
Let's
about.
go.
Yes, because Blockbuster just fizzled away, but Netflix has become more agile and
Yes.
came with the times and moved with the times. I absolutely love that. So, working with financial advisors, working with law students, law professionals, I'll just say, to really stay abreast about what's happening and more specifically for their company. So like you said, like nonprofits, all of those things as well too. Is that relatively new for you as far as the consulting is concerned?
Yeah, I just saw that there was a huge gap from
Yeah.
from my own experience. I was redoing, I bought some property and I don't have children, but I have adorable godchildren and thinking about legacy and what that means to me at this point in my life. I realized one, I was past divorce and I just have this whole new life. How do I reimagine, not only reimagine what I will do in the future, but as it relates to my assets right now and how I'm earning and how I'm providing for a very fabulous lifestyle, darling, until I'm well into my 100s. My maternal grandmother lived to be 103 and literally
Wow.
just passed of natural causes.
Wow.
She's like one of the only people I know who literally just passed of natural causes. The last sentence that we heard left her, my mom and I were with her. She had some issues, but relatively small for a 103-year-old person. And we were saying goodbye that evening, intending to see her the next morning. And she said, well, all's well that ends well. Okay. I was like, that's curious. And that's literally the last that we heard. And it makes, it fills me with so much pride to know that as difficult and challenging as her life was, in some sense, one, she always focused on the positive. She ate what she wanted, she drank what she wanted, she had a hell of a time, and she always laughed. She outlived everyone who was a contemporary. So she got younger friends, which is what I'm doing now, darling, and made sure
glad
that
to
you
be
had
one
your
of 'em.
people and that you were laughing and loving and just being, fabulous. So that's the life that I absolutely envision for myself, and the details will work it out, but I have to have the resources to do that. And as I was doing my estate plan over, it became patently obvious that the person I was speaking to was great at trust and estates work and horrible about understanding how to protect my crypto wealth for later generations, because it's unique. It's in some sense a lot like protecting intellectual property, I came to find, because as I was doing some trust and estates work early in my practice life, we always had to have a separate trustee for clients who owned intellectual property, because it wasn't enough for mama and them to be named as a personal trustee or executor, or to even have a corporate executor or trustee, but someone who was well versed in this particular area. And so I'm approaching that in the same way. I'm presenting to trust advisors and trust and estates lawyers and CPAs and accountants. How are we going to deal with this?
Right.
Does it make any sense for us to build wealth as crypto wealth as a part of an overall strategy, and then leave it to folks who don't know what to do with it, don't know how to find it, don't know how to transfer it, don't know how to access
Absolutely.
it,
And don't know how to
plan
value
for
it at the end of the day
taxes,
too. You'd
and
be
not
like,
how to
oh,
value
they
it.
left me this weird coin. I only
Right,
have one of them,
right. I
but
think it's
not
called Bitcoin,
understanding,
right?
right, that it's worth like $200 million or
Correct.
something like that.
That's correct. It's like, I don't know. Do you? Right.
Right.
Gone.
And I think about, honestly, once you said that, when you said you have to have a specific trustee to handle intellectual property, you're absolutely right. Because unless you understand the value of the processes, the structure, your writings, all
That's
of that.
right.
If you don't understand what somebody has truly left you, and
That's
that
correct.
these are repeatable processes that you can teach to make millions, to turn into different forms, then somebody will squander that away if you're not
Absolutely.
careful. Um,
Squander or steal.
or you're right, or flat out steal. Um, yeah, we've seen a lot of stealing of those intellectual properties in the Black community,
Absolutely.
so that's a whole separate podcast.
That's right. I'll come back for that.
Yeah, we'll come back and talk about how our intellectual property has been stolen throughout the years. But no, that's so good. Um, Gosh, I hate to end this conversation, but I have so much more. But that is so good. Let me ask you this, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
to wrap up our conversation. What You can take this in two parts if you like.
Mm.
What advice do you have for the doctor that is listening who is either kind of hesitant about what to do as far as cryptocurrency? And I know this is not legal or financial advice, but how would you advise them to start taking an approach to looking at that as part of their wealth building journey? And also, how would you speak to the doctor who is understanding that they do have intellectual property, that they have been giving so much of their expertise and their knowledge
Mm-hmm.
and their wealth to the system, and it's not been valued or reciprocated, and they do want to take it away and do something with it? Maybe they're going to be a consultant or become a coach. How would you advise those two people?
Mm-hmm. A lot of the advice I would give for one answer actually lends itself well to the second.
Okay.
And it makes me think of like a Sojourner Truth, Harriet Tubman moment. Like, everybody can't go with you.
True.
Everybody can't go with you. So you have to identify those who are lifelong learners, who are both prudent but optimistic, and give up the idea, virtually touch and agree on this, that you're not going to have all of the answers. And if you wait until you think you will have missed every good opportunity. There are few opportunities in a lifetime to get ahead. And sometimes it's once in a generation. It makes me think of the great land grab in these United States and theft. Sorry for another day. It makes me think of the Industrial Revolution that focused on going from human labor to more technological labor. It makes me think of the era that moved from that level of rudimentary automation to the internet. It makes me think of the move, and we certainly had the dot-com bust and boom and reorganization at that time. There were thousands of domain names or companies built on, those dot-coms. Most of them did not survive. We
Right.
got like 6 or 7, but it took decades to shake out. So in some sense, you are using the best information that you have at the time. And then when you have new information, be savvy enough and willing to pivot when you have new information. We are in a new information cycle because we're in a post information world. There's no shortage of information. I went to YouTube University to learn a lot of this in the beginning. There's no shortage. At this point, we need people to be able to carefully curate it in a way that keeps you well informed, still on the leading edge, but also well protected. You have a blind spot where you don't know that you don't know, and that will cost you. But don't throw out the technology for our angst about wanting to know everything at one time. Fear is not a sound investment or life strategy. It is information, but it is acute, and we're not supposed to sit in it, right? Fear of getting in, I call it fogey, I made it up, or fear of missing out. These are not sound strategies. because it's not about the technology is agnostic, just as the dollar is, but the dollar is still the number one resource used and preferred by nefarious and criminal activity around the world because it has the most value. The first scams I ever saw were in the first use case for the internet, which was electronic mail. I would get an email. I get texts now. Evidently, someone would like me to send my bank account information. And they would, gladly have that. And then they're going to evidently send me a whole bunch of money from Wakanda. I don't know.
Right. Exactly.
We didn't throw out email, although we don't want to open it anymore. We didn't throw out the internet.
Right.
We are now in the age where instead of the internet primarily being used to exchange information and access information, to value. And that is the oil of that experience will be digital currency. We have AI agents that will need to pay each other across borders, and they will need one currency or a few. And it will not be beholden to a particular government. It will be the money, a global type of payment system that is driven by cryptocurrencies. May or may not be Bitcoin, I don't know. But the technology itself will be leveraged in this new iteration of the internet. And we have an opportunity not just to be investors, but also to build in the space. So in answer and to conclude to your final question, think about, and this is your homework, everyone. Doctors, I know you love homework. I want to be the head of the class. And this is how I learned when I first started. Just do a simple internet search or engage with AI to say, here's my area of expertise. Tell me everything that I should know to stay ahead of the curve with crypto and blockchain. You will be fascinated to know the things that are going on in the medical field and the education field and in supply chain. And if you don't want anything to do with the medical field, you still have the expertise to say, what's the next chapter? How can I leverage this technology to be the smartest person in the room? And that will translate into significant rewards in terms of freedom of time, freedom of assets, freedom of opportunities, because most people aren't having this conversation yet. So that's what I commend to you, to be the smartest person in the room. You will not know everything because everything is in continual flux. Learn the language. Get sound resources. Start with Digital Money Demystified. Keep listening to this podcast. And it's not just a matter of time, of if, but when. But time is on your side.
So good. I love that. I might do that myself. We in emergency medicine on the board that I sit on, we're definitely talking about how is AI changing us.
Absolutely.
As a specialty and changing the medical field. But I love the thought of also taking that to cryptocurrency, to blockchain. I'm thinking about, as you were talking, of course, even how are people going to pay for medical care?
That's right.
And that's probably the most obvious question, but it's just like, oh, well, all of these things and how wealth is going to be held in the hands of the patients or the hands of the corporations or these businesses. So good. Such amazing advice. Dr. Professor Tonya Evans, tell us briefly where we can find you on these interwebs if we want to learn more. And of course, like I said, I will put all of the links down in the show notes for everybody. But tell us, if you would please, where we can find you on the interweb.
I'm in a less is more and soft life era. So I'm just going to send everybody to one place. Just one place. Because we're tired. Go to proftonyaevans.com and you can learn everything there is. You have access to my my fintech trend report, which I do through Substack. There's a link through there. My books, Digital Money Demystified, and also an ebook titled The Cooperative Economics of Crypto. I released that during Black History Month, and it has a universal message as well. And also my own podcasts. So most recently, I have a segment on a SiriusXM podcast on the Women's Empowerment Network, and it's called Confidently Crypto. So plug in with me there and stay connected. And ABL, always be learning.
I love that. Thank you so much, Tonya. I appreciate your time. It's always good to catch up with you, and we will talk soon. Thank you for listening to the Docs Get Money podcast. New episodes drop every Thursday wherever you find your favorite podcast. Share, comment, follow, and subscribe to the Docs Get Money podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want to know more, visit me, Dr. Kimberly Brown, at KimberlyBrownMD.com, and be sure to follow me at Dr. Kimberly B on Instagram. And until next time, let's go get this money, honey.